I was 22, the youngest sister, and apparently, according to my aunt, I was also the family mistake. I'm posting this here because I still don't know whether to laugh, cry, or frame the moment and hang it on my wall as motivation. If nothing else, maybe this will entertain someone scrolling Reddit at 2 a.m., wondering if their family is messed up. Spoiler, yes. Yes, it is. This happened at my dad's 50th birthday party. Big milestone. Big venue. Big fake smiles. My dad is the kind of man who believes family is sacred, even when family repeatedly proves they are not. He rented out the back hall of a fancy restaurant. White tablecloths, waiters in black vests, the whole "we're classy now" illusion. There was a slideshow of his life playing on a projector. Baby photos, wedding photos, blurry vacation pictures from the early 2000s. Everyone clapped at the right moments like it was a rehearsed play. I was genuinely happy for him. He grew up poor, worked himself half to death, and finally made it to a place where he could afford something like this. I wanted the night to be perfect. I should have known better. Let me give you some context. I'm the youngest of 3 sisters. My oldest sister, Anna, is 31, married with 2 kids, a house, and a dog that has its own Instagram. My middle sister, Kate, is 27, a corporate overachiever who somehow turns even casual conversations into LinkedIn posts. And then there's me. I'm still figuring things out. Recently graduated. Still living in a tiny apartment with roommates. No 5-year plan. No ring. No kids. No impressive job title to drop during awkward family dinners. In my family, that makes you suspicious. My aunt, let's call her Linda, is my dad's older sister. She's the kind of woman who smiles while stabbing you, then insists you're too sensitive for bleeding. She has always had opinions about everyone's life, especially mine. Apparently, I was born too late, when my parents were already tired, already stretched thin. I've heard whispers my entire life that I was an accident, a surprise, a why not just stop it too. Usually, it's said indirectly. Jokes, side comments, passive-aggressive remarks disguised as concern. This time, she dropped the mask. The party was in full swing. People were laughing, clinking glasses. My dad was making his rounds, hugging relatives, thanking everyone for coming. I was standing near the dessert table, debating whether it was socially acceptable to grab a second slice of cake before the candles were even blown out. That's when Aunt Linda appeared at my side. She smelled like expensive perfume and judgment. She leaned in close, like she was about to share a secret. I braced myself for something like, "You should smile more," or so. "Have you found a nice man yet?" Instead, she whispered clear as day, "You're the family mistake." I swear the room went silent. Logically, I know it didn't. Music was still playing, people were still talking, but my brain hit pause. I felt like I'd been slapped without the courtesy of a warning. I looked at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. She smiled, sipped her wine, straightened my sleeve like she'd just given me loving advice, then walked away. Just like that. No one else noticed. Or maybe they did and pretended not to. Either way, I was left standing there, cake plates shaking slightly in my hands, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. I laughed, quietly, because what else do you do when someone confirms the fear you've been trying to outrun your whole life? I didn't tell my dad. Not that night. It was his birthday. He looked so happy, surrounded by people he believed loved him. I swallowed the words and washed them down with cheap champagne. But something changed in me in that moment. It wasn't just hurt. It was clarity. I realized Aunt Linda hadn't whispered because she was afraid someone would hear. She whispered because she wanted it to be personal, surgical, a message meant only for me. And the worst part? She thought she was right. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my life was already on the edge of turning point. I had been hiding something big, something that, if it came out, would flip the entire family narrative upside down. And karma? Karma was already warming up backstage. I just didn't know yet how loud it was about to be. After Aunt Linda whispered those words into my ear, I did what I've been trained to do my entire life. I pretended everything was fine. I smiled at relatives who suddenly felt too loud. I laughed at jokes I didn't hear. I even hugged Linda later when she loudly announced, "Family is everything," like the universe itself was mocking me in surround sound. Inside, though, something was cracking. That night, after the party ended and the balloons slowly deflated like sad, exhausted ghosts, I went home and cried in my car. Not a cute cry, not a single tear down the cheek moment. I'm talking full-on steering wheel gripping, ugly sobbing, mascara-destroying breakdown. Because here's the thing no one tells you about being the family mistake. You spend your entire life trying to earn your existence. Every achievement feels like an apology for being born. And that night, I was done apologizing. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a dangerous level of clarity. I replayed her words again and again. Not angrily, calmly, like evidence. You're the family mistake. Okay, Linda, let's talk about mistakes. What my family didn't know was that I had been living a double life for the past year. Not in a criminal way, although that would have been more exciting, but in a quiet, strategic way. 6 months before my dad's birthday, I had applied for a position I was wildly underqualified for on paper. A competitive international program. One of those things people apply to just to see, knowing damn well they won't get in. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sisters. Not my parents. Definitely not Aunt Linda. Because every time I shared good news growing up, it was either minimized or immediately compared to someone else's success. So I learned to keep my hopes small and my mouth shut. When I got the acceptance email, I stared at my laptop for a full 10 minutes, convinced it was a scam. Then I screamed. Then I cried again, this time in a good way. It came with a full scholarship, a relocation package, a chance to leave the city, the expectations, the constant feeling of being extra. But there was a catch. I had to keep it secret for now. The paperwork wasn't finalized, and nothing makes bad luck arrive faster than a jealous relative. So I waited, quietly, patiently, which brings us back to the birthday party. 2 days after the event, my dad called me. His voice was gentle, the way it always is when he senses something's off. You seemed quiet the other night, he said. Everything okay? I almost told him. Almost. But then I pictured his face if he confronted Linda. The family drama. The way it would somehow become my fault for misunderstanding her tone. So I said, yeah, just tired. Lie number 1. The real explosion started a week later at Sunday lunch. Every Sunday, our family gathers at my parents' house like it's some kind of emotional Hunger Games. My mom cooks enough food to feed a small army. My sisters bring their kids. Linda brings unsolicited commentary. That Sunday, she came armed. So, she said loudly, while everyone was seated, any news from our youngest? Still figuring things out. Anna smiled politely. Kate glanced at her phone. My dad frowned slightly, but said nothing. I felt the familiar heat crawl up my neck. I'm actually doing great, I said. Linda laughed. Not a chuckle. A full, dismissive laugh. That's what they all say before reality hits. Something snapped. Before I could stop myself, I replied, funny. You seem very invested in my reality. The table went quiet. Linda raised an eyebrow. I just worry about you. You know, some people aren't meant for big things. Mistake number 2. Because that's when my mom spoke up. She's smarter than you think, my mom said calmly, placing down her fork. Linda waved her hand. Intelligence doesn't always translate into success. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because my email notification buzzed in my pocket at that exact moment. Final confirmation. Official documents. The last piece falling into place. Karma, it seemed, had excellent timing. I didn't say anything yet. I finished my lunch. I helped clear the table. I hugged my nieces. But inside, I was counting down. Because soon, very soon, the family mistake was about to become the family headline. And Linda? She was about to learn what happens when you underestimate the quiet one, that I didn't announce my news right away. Not because I was scared. Okay, maybe a little, but because I wanted to choose the moment. For once in my life, I wanted control. I'd spent years reacting, explaining, shrinking myself to fit whatever version of me made other people comfortable. This time, I decided to let the truth walk into the room on its own. 2 weeks passed, then 3. In that time, Aunt Linda somehow became louder. She started calling my mom, out of concern, asking if I was okay mentally. She told Kate that I should consider something stable, maybe a local job. Not everyone needs to chase unrealistic dreams. She even suggested, this is real, that I moved back in with my parents to save money until I figure myself out. I found out because my mom told me. She looked embarrassed, like she was apologizing for someone else's behavior. That was when I knew this wasn't just about me. It was about control. Linda needed me to stay small, so she could stay superior. Meanwhile, my departure date was officially set. 3 months. 3 months until I'd be on a plane, starting a life no one in my family could micromanage. I signed documents, attended virtual orientations, and quietly packed boxes in my apartment like I was preparing for a soft escape. The irony? The more my life was coming together, the more Linda's began to unravel. It started subtly. At another family gathering, this time my cousin's engagement party, people were whispering. Linda arrived late, without her usual confidence. Her husband hovered awkwardly, refilling his drink a little too often. Kate leaned over to me and whispered, "Something's going on with Aunt Linda." Apparently, Linda's business, the one she bragged about every holiday, was being audited. Hard. I didn't know details, but words like irregularities and mismanagement floated through conversations like smoke. I tried not to smile. I tried harder when Linda cornered me near the bathroom. "You look pleased," she said sharply. "Doi." I replied, "Must be the lighting." She leaned in, eyes narrowing. "You know, success isn't permanent. One wrong step and it's gone." I met her gaze. Funny. That's exactly what I was thinking. Her face twitched. For the first time, I saw it, fear. The next domino fell a week later. My dad called a family meeting. Those words alone were enough to spike everyone's blood pressure. We gathered in the living room, kids upstairs, coffee untouched. Dad looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like someone who had just learned something that restructured his understanding of reality. He cleared his throat. "Linda," he said, "is there anything you'd like to tell us?" The room went still. Linda laughed nervously. "About what?" Dad took a deep breath. "About the money." Silence. It turned out Linda had been borrowing from a shared family investment fund. Small amounts at first, then larger ones, always with the intention of paying it back. Except she didn't. My dad had discovered it while organizing paperwork for retirement. Her face went pale. She tried to explain, then deflect, then blame. She said she'd done it for her family. She said no one would have noticed. She said it wasn't that much. My mom stood up. "It was enough," she said quietly. "Enough to break trust." I watched the woman who once called me a mistake unravel in real time. The irony was almost poetic. No one yelled. No one needed to. The disappointment was louder than anger. After that meeting, Linda left early. No hugs, no wine, no parting wisdom. As she passed me, she muttered, "Don't think you're better than me." I didn't respond, because I didn't need to. 2 days later, my dad came over to my apartment. He sat on my couch, looking around like he was seeing my life for the first time. "I owe you an apology," he said. I froze. "For not always standing up for you," he continued. "For letting things slide. I thought keeping peace was the same as protecting my kids. I was wrong." That was when I told him. Everything. The program. The scholarship. The move. He stared at me, stunned. Then he smiled. Not the polite smile people give when they're surprised. A real one. "You did all this on your own?" he asked. I nodded. He pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You were never a mistake." I wish that had been the end. But karma wasn't done yet. Linda still had one last card to play, and she was about to play it very badly. I should have known Aunt Linda wouldn't go down quietly. People like her never do. They don't apologize. They don't reflect. They rewrite the story until they're the victim and everyone else is the villain. And when that doesn't work, they escalate. Hard. About a week after the family meeting, I started getting messages. At first, they were subtle. Distant relatives asking, "Hey, are you okay?" Or "Is everything going on with the family true?" Then old family friends I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to catch up. That's when I realized Linda was talking. Correction, Linda was spinning. According to her new version of events, I wasn't just the family mistake. I was now the manipulator. The ungrateful youngest who had poisoned my dad against her. The dramatic child who exaggerated harmless comments and turned everyone against family. I found this out when a cousin forwarded me a message Linda had sent in a group chat I wasn't part of. She's always been unstable, Linda wrote. You know how she is. She couldn't handle the truth. Unstable. That word hit harder than the whisper at the birthday party. I sat on my bed, phone in hand, shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. I had stayed quiet for years. I had swallowed every insult. And now, because karma dared to touch her, I was suddenly the villain in her downfall story. For the first time, I didn't cry. I got angry. And anger, it turns out, is a very productive emotion when you stop turning it inward. I called my dad. He sighed the moment I mentioned Linda. I know, he said. She's been calling people. I don't want to fight her, I said. But I'm done being quiet. There was a pause. Then he said, then don't be. That was all the permission I needed. I didn't make a public post. I didn't call people one by one. I did something much simpler and much more effective. I told the truth. Calmly. Factually. With receipts. When relatives reached out, I explained exactly what happened at the birthday party. Word for word. No embellishment. No drama. When they asked about the money, I told them that wasn't my story to tell, but that my dad had proof. And when someone forwarded me another one of Linda's messages, I responded with screenshots. The tone of the conversations changed fast. Suddenly, people stopped defending her. Suddenly, they started asking her questions she couldn't answer. Linda noticed. She showed up at my parents' house unannounced. I wasn't there, but my mom told me everything. Linda cried, loudly. She said she felt betrayed. She said she was under attack. She said she never meant any harm, and that people were taking things out of context. Then, this part still makes my jaw clench. She blamed me. If she hadn't been so sensitive, Linda said, none of this would have happened. My dad stood up. I heard what you said to her, he replied. And even if I hadn't, this isn't her fault. It's yours. Apparently, Linda lost it. She accused my dad of choosing his failed child over his own sister. She said blood should matter more than feelings. She said I'd never survive on my own and that he'd regret supporting me. That was the moment my mom stepped in. You don't get to define her, my mom said. And you don't get to stay in our lives if you keep trying. Silence. Linda left. The fallout was brutal. Family gatherings were split. Holidays were tense. Some people avoided taking sides. Others chose very clearly. I chose peace. I threw myself into preparations for my move. Sold furniture. Donated clothes. Closed chapters. Each box I packed felt like shedding a version of myself that had been built on other people's expectations. Then, 2 weeks before my departure, Linda did something truly unhinged. She emailed the organization I was moving with. I found out because they forwarded it to me, concerned. In the email, Linda claimed I was emotionally unstable, that I had a history of conflict, and that bringing me into their program would be a risk. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. She was trying to destroy my future. But karma, remember? Karma had receipts too. I forwarded the email to my program coordinator along with documentation, acceptance letters, evaluations, references, and, after a long pause, screenshots of Linda's messages and proof of the family situation. Their response came the next day. We are fully confident in our decision, they wrote. If anything, this reinforces your resilience. Linda had aimed for my life. She missed. And now it was time for the final act. Because I was about to leave. And she was about to be exposed in front of the one audience she still cared about. The day of my goodbye dinner arrived faster than I expected. My parents insisted on doing something small before I left. Just close family, no drama, no speeches. I almost said no. I was tired, emotionally wrung out, ready to disappear quietly. But something in me knew this wasn't just a goodbye. It was a full circle. We met at the same restaurant where my dad had celebrated his 50th birthday. Same white tablecloths. Same soft lighting. Different energy. This time, I wasn't the girl hiding behind a cake plate. Everyone arrived slowly. My sisters, their kids, a few cousins, even some relatives who hadn't spoken to us since the fallout showed up. Awkward, but curious. And then, of course, Linda walked in. I hadn't invited her. Neither had my parents. She came anyway. She looked thinner, tired. Her confidence was forced, like badly applied makeup. She sat down without asking, smiled too wide, and said, "I thought family should be together for moments like this." No one argued. The waiter poured wine. Glasses clinked. Small talk limped along like a wounded animal. Finally, my dad stood up. "I want to say something," he said. Linda straightened. He didn't look at her. "I want to thank my youngest daughter," he continued, turning toward me, "for her courage, for her patience, and for building something incredible without needing approval." My throat tightened. He gestured for me to stand. I did, hands shaking, heart racing, but I stood. "I wasn't sure I should say anything tonight," I began, "but there's something I learned this year." Linda sighed loudly. I smiled. "I learned that being called a mistake doesn't make you one. Staying where you're not respected does." The room went still. I looked directly at Linda. At this same table, months ago, I was told I was a family mistake. That comment stayed with me. But instead of breaking me, it clarified something. Linda scoffed. "Oh, here we go." I continued. "Since then, I was accepted into an international program with a full scholarship. I'll be moving abroad in a few days to start work I'm proud of." Murmurs. Shocked faces. My sisters beamed. And I added calmly, when someone tried to sabotage that opportunity by contacting my organization and questioning my mental stability, it failed. Linda's face drained of color. Gasps. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm saying this not for revenge," I said, "but for closure. Words matter. Actions have consequences. And I refuse to carry shame that doesn't belong to me." Silence. Then my mom stood up and hugged me. Anna clapped. Then Kate. Then, slowly, others joined. Linda stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're ungrateful," she hissed. "After everything." My dad cut her off. "Enough," he said. "You're done." She looked around, waiting for support. None came. Linda grabbed her bag and left. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. No applause this time, just relief. Later that night, as I walked out of the restaurant, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt light. 3 days later, I was on a plane, watching my city shrink beneath the clouds. I thought about that girl at the birthday party, frozen in place, holding a plate of cake while someone tried to define her worth in a whisper. I wish I could tell her what I know now, that being underestimated is a gift, that silence can be strategic, and that karma doesn't rush, but it never forgets an address. As for Linda, last I heard, she's no longer invited to family events. Her business never recovered. People stopped listening when she talked. And me? I'm doing just fine. Turns out, the family mistake was the only one brave enough to leave and build something better.